it, and welcome to our lecture. Nice to see you all in here. Very well. As always, we have a large and difficult topic, but we are interested to share and develop our thoughts with you. So don't hesitate to give comments for us during this lecture or later. And before we are going to forward to our content, we will make a short introduction. So I'm a Pia and I'm a PhD with theater and drama, which I have adjunct professor status as well. My history in philosophical practice runs over decades when I started to educate it and practice myself systematically. After 2 years education in Finland, I have been participated facilitating training in Germany and England. I'm also a person in charge in philosophical practice education in Finland, as well share in philosophical practice network. Anu, please, your turn.
So hello from me too. At the moment, I'm doing my PhD research at the University of Jyväskylä. And at the same time, I'm also a project researcher at the Finnish Institute of Educational Research. And I'm a colleague of Pia, so we have done philosophical practices together. We were at the same training program in Finland and also in England in this international group for facilitators in Socratic dialogue. So maybe that's it. Thank you.
Okay, the next slide.
Okay, so when we are waiting for the next slide, there is going to be a wonderful picture from a scene from Socratic dialogue. And then you can see an overview from the content of our dialogue. So I'm not going into that. But I have to note that the presentation today is a bit different than the abstract in the conference program because we decided to make it a bit more simple and clear and to leave something out. But I want to say something about why we chose this topic. It's about being somehow transparent with what you are doing, but because we felt that the Socratic dialogues had really strong effect on us every time we were taking a part or facilitating a Socratic dialogue, and that effect also continued after the actual dialogue situation to our everyday life. And one thing, a reason for that, we think is that these dialogues are usually or always essentially about ethics, about the values that ground our decisions and our actions in our life. And we wanted to understand a bit more better what is going on, what are the grounding principles, like not only what are the values that behind the action of the participants, but behind the Socratic method itself in this Nelsonian tradition. But yes, here's the picture. I think, was it that the topic was here, the limit of tolerance? We were both, Pia and me, participating in this dialogue, and you can see the facilitator also there in the background, Vander Lemes. Pia, please.
Okay, let's go forward. Can you change the slide?
Yes.
Okay, we're starting about this, that what is Socratic dialogue? Here is the line from Leonard Nelson. When it's coming. Oh, this technical, wonderful world. Okay. The method of Socratic dialogue is an extension and development of Socratic method, essentially dating back to Göttingen philosopher and pedagogic Leonard Nelson and his disciple Gustav Heckmann, both from Germany. You can change the next slide.
Done.
These philosophers shared a marked interest in mathematics, as well as an over-engagement in social politics. Nelson's idea of development Socratic method into a methodology of group dialogue is closely linked to philosophers Fries and Kant. Opposite than Plato's two partners, in Socratic dialogue, each participant has an opportunity to act as midwife for the development of the idea of every other participant. Ideally, this leads to philosophical or mathematical knowledge that is shared by all members of the group. Before the Second World War, Heckman has used Socratic dialogue as a teacher in the boarding school founded by Nelson, first in Germany and then in Denmark and Britain. After 1945, he returned to Germany and became professor of education in Hanover. Can you share the slide?
Yeah.
You do it, but it's waiting. Oh no. The facilitator's important task is to see to clarity and transparency. The most important point in all is the autonomy in thinking. Only those who engage in the process of knowledge in their own mind gain philosophical insights. External influences should do no more than stimulate independent thinking. And the next, I like to introduce very shortly about the structure of Socratic dialogue. It's going to be next two slide. Yes, lovely. Okay, and then the structure of Socratic dialogue. Can you see this very well? Yes, good, thanks. Okay, the structure of Socratic dialogue is not one and only repeating pattern. The parts of structure are usually separated 5 or more parts. These parts demonstrate a red line of dialogue in very shortly. All the group sessions start instructed by facilitator. Facilitator is an equal partner of group, even he not an active member of dialogue. Socratic dialogue starting with the concrete and remaining in contact with concrete experience. Working with a chosen example is central activity in dialogue. In this part of dialogue, a group trying to study the topic by questioning and arguments. A group can independently decide which argument they like to start to follow and testing. A group can make intervention which lead the participant to pay attention to a question or aspect that derives from the main question. The main duties for the group are find a full understanding between participants, adherence to subsidiary question until it is answered, and striving for consensus. Reaching consensus, usually doing by common sentence. A group try to formulate conclusion of their dialogue. Evaluation or meta-dialogue means the last round for the group. Participants can share their comments, experiences in present session. In meta-dialogue, participants not make comment anymore or doing dialogue with others. This description doesn't present well to all fruitful parts of Socratic dialogue, but it's hopefully giving understanding of structure. The important part of Socratic dialogue is also the role of facilitator, and the next one we will open shortly 6 pedagogical measures by Heckman. A dialogue in Socratic, when it's help individual participants to gain general insight through reflection or on concrete experience. In the Socratic dialogue, it is facilitator's pedagogical task to ensure that happen. For this reason, measures are important, as Heckman said. First, the facilitator has to nurture the participant's own capacity to judge by withholding his own opinion about the question being discussed. 2. The facilitator has to guide the participant to work from the concrete and to ensure that the link to the concrete is always in people's mind when they progress toward general insights. It is most fruitful to investigate one of the participant's real-life experiences, provided it can be presented openly and without embarrassment or shame. 3. The facilitator has to watch to see whether the participants really understand each other's and help participants with the right questions. Number 4. The facilitator has to bring the group's attention back to the unfinished point. Number 5. We are unable to identify statements of which we can confidentially claim that they are error-free or without need of revision. Number 6. The facilitator observes the direction that dialogue takes and to watch that significant questions are tackled and fruitful contributions are taken up. Using intervention, facilitator project the dialogue from the fate of many unguided discussions. Facilitator is not pernicied by having to defend his own view on the matter being discussed. And the next one, where and with whom can you practice Socratic dialogue? The method of Socratic dialogue is practiced in the post-Ariad context, in ethics seminar at universities, in philosophy and ethics lessons in schools, in teacher training, in adult education, in service training of leadership personnel, and in medical ethics. The method is suitable in all fields where, setting out from a specific problem, general solutions are sought. Socratic dialogue has proven its value especially outside academic philosophy in that it demands independent reflection by all participants. My dear Anu, it's your turn.
Thank you, Pia. So next, something about the context in which Nelson developed his method, and I think this helps to understand the central nature of ethics in this Socratic method. At his address, The World View of Ethics and Religion, given in 1922, Nelson describes the moral climate of his time after the World War. Nelson tells us that most people had lost a secure ground for their existence and were rather following the impulse of the moment in their moral decisions. However, they still felt the need for a firm foundation for life and the need to learn how to understand and judge events. And here is the point where philosophy steps in. In his another essay, The Art of Philosophizing, Nelson argues that philosophy's highest task lies here, in practical sphere in ethics. Philosophy should help us to deal with problems that confront us in our daily life and to provide us rules by which to evaluate those situations and how to act thoughtfully in them. But this kind of thoughtfulness demands that we achieve a personal insight into these ultimate purposes and aims of human life. And Nelson thinks or thought that this is precisely the purpose of philosophy, to teach us to recognize these aims. Nelson's Socratic method is then the way to reach these aims of human life that, according to Nelson, were founded in reason. The emphasis on ethics remains in focus on Socratic dialogues also today. For example, Ferdinand Lille has argued, based on his experience, that Socratic dialogue is essentially concerned with ethics, which means that Socratic dialogue is always about values, sometimes called as principles, that make up people's lives. And to put his ideas into practice, Nelson thought that there had to be some changes in the way individuals lived and also how societies were arranged. And Pia also already referred to this educational facility that Nelson founded, this Valkemühle school. And before that, Nelson already founded also a political organization to put his ethical ideas into practice. He wanted to educate future leaders and citizens into the society that had this capability to independent thinking and had moral insight. And so Gustav Heckman and Nelson's followers continued this educational work. And I think Socratic dialogue shows its relevance also today, nearly as on the same grounds as Nelson was talking about after the World War. The climate crisis seems to indicate that we are in the middle of a moral confusion right now. At least it seems that way to me, and we should make transparent the obscure values behind our practices that have led us and the world into this critical situation. So the question is here, could Socratic dialogue somehow promote a sustainable way of life? I think so, and luckily there are also others who think the same. With my colleagues at the University of Jyväskylä, we study the Socratic dialogue as a pedagogical practice that could promote ethical sustainability, or in other words, wisdom in both students and professionals. And if you have something to ask this project, so maybe in the question and answer part, it's possible. So then step by step towards our main topic, Socratic dialogue as an ethical practice. So we are interested to understand, are there some normative ideals behind Socratic dialogue? And when we talk about normative ideals, we mean this kind of guiding principles or values in the approach itself that the participants are expected to commit themselves to when they are taking part in the dialogue. So we think there are, and I'll discuss here 3 such ideals. The first one is trust in reason. Nelson declared himself to be a follower of Immanuel Kant and Jacob Friedrich Fries, and hence the tradition of critical philosophy. Nelson shared with these philosophers the trust in reason to find the philosophical truths that could offer us that firm ground of existence. This trust in reason is central to the process of Socratic dialogue. Well, however, his followers did not necessarily engage in this kind of theoretical background, but anyway promoted trust in reason in their pedagogic practices. In Socratic dialogue, the trust in reason is present in supporting the independent thinking and judgments of the participant, and also the non-dogmatic attitude. The facilitator of the dialogue always should refer back to the participant's own capacity to think, to reason, not to offer any ready-made answers. And Gisela Rouse-Spray, an experienced facilitator in the tradition, has also pointed out that the basis for this joint effort of Socratic dialogue is actually this trust in reason or capacity to think, which we all share. And this non-dogmatic attitude is about freeing oneself from outside authorities, because a practice of philosophy means a continuous process of reflection and reasonable examination. This also means an open-minded attitude towards others and different opinions, as well as the readiness to submit all statements to examination. As the second ideal, here is the search for truth. Nelson's Socratic method was a method for reaching the ultimate philosophical truths. And the idea behind this method is that philosophical knowledge somehow manifests itself in our everyday actions and judgments. Nelson claims that by analyzing these everyday judgments, we can arrive at basic philosophical principles. The investigation consists in analyzing the presuppositions behind our judgments and exposing them to shared critical examination. Well, this kind of claim that we are able to reach truth in Socratic dialogue has gone, one could say, out of fashion. And also already Heckman sets the aim of Socratic dialogue to be more moderate than Nelson. Heckman states that a reached consensus of a statement in Socratic dialogue is always provisional. We may later become aware of an aspect we had not considered before, and hence there arises a need to re-examine the statement. In Socratic dialogue, this ideal to search for truth is present as aiming for consensus and as a tool for self-criticism. You could think that is some kind of antidote to relativism and dogmas, the quest to think for yourself, to demand to think critically of your ideas. Here Raupa Stray also points out an important function of the dialogue I want to present. Every society sets a normative framework for its citizens, and Raupa Stray argues that the cultivation of Socratic dialogue offers all groups of participants in every generation the chance of comprehending and accepting through their own individual effort the reasonable elements from this normative framework. So she argues that this cultivation works against all ideologies or dogmas. Okay, then there's still this third point, important one also, that we think is as an ideal behind Socratic dialogues, and it is the demand of human dignity. In other words, the idea of justice. And this again has its roots in Nelson's philosophy and in his trust in reason. So Nelson thought that our reason sets us this kind of moral duty that we should follow. And it was important for him to point out that we must find ourselves through this moral insight, this idea of justice that is behind our actions. The moral duty cannot come from outside, from any outside authorities. Nelson talks also about our dignity as man and self-respect that gives us strength to follow the moral law. Failing to fulfill our duty would subject us to guilt and despise in our own eyes. Yeah. So in philosophical practice, we are often interested in if the philosopher does what he says, and at least Ferdinand Lille reports that Nelson was told by his followers to have exemplified this human dignity in his own life and personality. Lille argues that the most important thing for Nelson was to help the relations of people to each other to become right, meaning to be characterized by respect and trust. And this respect for others is present also in the dialogue practice in this method, as it offers a possibility to perceive opinions, convictions, difficulties of other participants, and to increase sensitivity to their problems and feeling respect for them. So there is also the important experience of interdependence and mutual aid in a shared reflection. Participants can become aware that they can make greater progress together than alone. So, next to our conclusion. So, what would be answer to our question about what kind of ethical practice does Socratic dialogue promote? So, based on what we were saying, we argue that Socratic dialogue promotes ethical practices such as independent self-critical thinking, the search for intersubjectively shared statements or truth, and respect for other people and nature. These ethical practices help people in their search for the ultimate purposes and aims of human life, and hence answer to the experienced need for inner stability and for a standard which to guide their life. We argue also that these ethical practices can support individuals' active but also responsible participation into society. So Pia, please continue.
Okay, thank you very much, Anu. There is numbers of very interesting questions in the chat, but before we are going there, we have the case example. So this is something that we don't want to offer the one right answer for this. Mainly, we want that we can, share it about this. This happens to me when I was facilitating a group a few years ago. And a small group of people participate at Socratic dialogue facilitated by me. The original idea was to have meeting at 4 or 5 times with the same group. The group was all adult volunteers and they didn't know each other before we are starting. During the second meeting, one participant behaved slightly aggressive toward the others. He was also absolutely sure of the truth and the only way of living coming from the Buddhist worldview. This was my guess about the things, what he said. When the others tried to critically questioning him, he was visibly annoyed. After the third meeting, the other participant messages that they don't feel safe within the dialogue group with the man is questioning involved, so they wanted to stop. And I started to asking by myself after this experience how to practice ethical principles in this kind of situation. And what kind of principles, what kind of ethics we're talking about these kind of cases. So be free to share your opinions. What do you think about this kind of situation? And because we know that in Socratic dialogue, it's like a rule that when you're starting the dialogue, you can't finish the middle of the dialogue. And this case, the organization that the Critical Open University, who was the host of this dialogue, when we spoke about this, they say that probably they need to send a message to this man that he is not able to participate in this dialogue anymore because the other people starting to scare about him. And when they sent this message to this man, of course, he was very angry about this, and he felt that this unfair conclusion about this dialogue, and after all, he sent the message that the facilitator, me, as the leader of devil. So, what kind of ideas you gonna get this?
So I'll show the references page here.
Yeah.
And then I close the
that's good.
Slideshow. Yeah.
Can we speak now?
Yes, you can speak. You're welcome to share your ideas and thoughts, please.
Well, first I have a question. I mean, before this message was sent from the university, have you addressed that in the group? have you addressed the men in the group, in front of the group, that maybe in a, of course, polite way, explaining what is disturbing and why? Have you done that?
Yes, I tried to do that. And of course, I reminded the group about the basic rules of the dialogue and the nature of how we're talking together. But obviously, he couldn't understand that because he just want to stick in his own opinions and the way to doing dialogue.
I want to understand a little better. You spoke
Yes.
again in a general way about the rules, or have you addressed these men directly, like asking people what is disturbing? Please tell him in front of the group, like not in general repeat the rules. Have you done directly addressed him about his
Yes.
particular?
Yeah, I understand. Very good questions. I did both. I did, the general ideas that how we're doing Socratic dialogue, but I addressed it to him as well. The precisely that, okay, if somebody want to criticize your opinion, you must start to doing, the dialogue, not, the fighting against this opinion or something like that. Yes, I addressed it to him as well, but he couldn't understand that, obviously. Yeah. Difficult situation, very difficult.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, did someone say Peter? Is that for me?
Go on.
So it seems that we need to sort of perhaps break the ethical aspects up into different parts.
Yes.
So, for instance, there's the straightforward rules. What are the rules of this particular group that have been asked, that have joined together, and how does what he's doing fit with those rules?
Yes.
Straightforward. Is there anything that he needs to change, or anyone else needs to change, according to the rules that we have, as far as they've been explicitly stated, right? And maybe we need to state them more explicitly. So there's a sort of just a straightforward, almost etiquette kind of approach to it. The second one is then to think about what the method says. What does the method suggest that we do? And thirdly, there might be a methodological aspect as well. Talking about the philosophical principles that lie behind the ethics of the method itself, and talking about them on a more meta aspect. And, so there's levels of depth, I think, that we could perhaps go to. And at the moment, it seems like the discussion is about the first level, the etiquette kind of aspect. And then we just need to make sure that we're clear about what the rules are, and if we're not, to be clearer.
Yes.
So that would be my suggestion. I don't know, as a sort of starting point for discussion. The other two bits are more difficult to address, and they require a little bit more thought and consideration, and perhaps even a full Socratic dialogue in order to approach them, particularly the third one.
Yeah, very, very good points. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, it's very important that when people starting to doing Socratic dialogue, that they have this kind of the clear ideas that how we are working about the main, ethical principles. Example, that when we say that Socratic dialogue want to support equal participant, that we have to feel safe if we open, the personal experience stories and the talking about these things. So at least we can say that if somebody behaving aggressively to the others, it's no, absolutely. Yeah.
To be a bit literalist about it, if we go to Socrates, I mean, Thrasymachus was not thrown out because Thrasymachus was being a bit aggressive.
Yes.
The point of Thrasymachus and Callicles and other interlocutors with Socrates is that their aggressivity is part of what it is to be engaged. So I think there's an interesting question. This is perhaps on the more methodological level.
Yes.
An interesting question about the extent to which the participants have to be a certain way. is there a sense in which, is it a, if you have someone who's forceful, aggressive, dominant, does that mean that they're a bad person?
Yeah.
Should they be told off?
Yes.
If working with very young children, perhaps so, which addresses a question I asked earlier. But if you're working with adults, then as long as they're not beating each other up physically, maybe there's a bit more freedom in terms of how they are and what their personality is like. And also sometimes you can have groups which turn on someone, a sort of groupthink approach where they turn on an individual for being the way they are, and that doesn't seem right either. So it's complicated. Yeah.
That's a good point. Also, it reminds me also that in the ideal world, in the ideal situation, the group doesn't need a facilitator at all, because the group, when people starting to know how to make the Socratic dialogue, the group can do it without the facilitator. At least the adult, maybe the children are a little bit different, but the adult at least. But obviously, it's never even happened. But I think it's the good point. Anu, you want to say something?
Thank you.
Yes, because I think that here we come also to these normative ideals that we try to present, or our understanding of those. Like for me, it seems that for the Socratic dialogue to work, you have to engage in this kind of ideals, to trust your reason and search for truth and respect others. Otherwise, the dialogue isn't fully functioning. But then, if this is the case, so how much how would I express it? How well do you have to practice these ideas already at the beginning of the dialogue, and how much you can develop those during the dialogue? And it's interesting balance, you have to have some basic principles already at the beginning to be able to, and have the motivation maybe even, or the certain attitude to engage this kind of process. What is your attitude when you step into the dialogue? And then you are maybe more open to practice or develop this certain way of ethical practice.
And that's a good point. And I believe also that I remember that I waited for the last minute that this man gets some kind of click in his head and see that, wow, I am a person who have a habit to react it like this when people are demonstrate or say the opposite opinion than my own, that this group could open to him some kind of the beautiful reflection field to learn more about himself. But no, it wasn't happen, unfortunately.
It doesn't always happen.
Sorry, I want to say something to what Peter said.
Yes.
I think that you, Peter, did a funny twist here, because you said, does it mean that he's a bad person?
Yeah.
But it is not the question of judging, are they bad or are they good?
Yes.
Now you made a very funny twist here. I think that to some extent what you said can be accepted, to which extent, let him or her be. But I think that here, of course, this last point of respect, we have to respect and equal, but also us as equal respect. And so if my self-respect, his or her self-respect at some point does not tolerate it anymore, then it is done. Then this person must go. Not right away, but the question of self-respect, how much do I allow me as one member of a group, she, her, and the facilitator, how much do we accept until our self-respect does not tolerate it anymore? And it doesn't matter he is bad, he is good. It is the question of how far I let them go with me, because I'm also equal, and also me, I deserve respect, right? So I just wanted to say that. But the question is, of course, how far?
Yeah, that's good.
There are
But
We can-
what do you
Yeah, and I believe that this tolerate is the key word, what you said, because the reasons why we decided to pick up this example was that, okay, it's very nice to keep all the ethical principles when things running smoothly and the group is working beautifully together. But every single time when it's happened something, you know, like a problematic, that's the real situation, that when you have to testing about these ethical questions more deeply, that how to working on. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So
I know.
what do you think, Pia? There's questions on the chat.
Chat box. Yes, we
So
tried.
could we take these first and then continue with?
Yes, I think it's good. But Taisia, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I want to propose another idea that in this case, we might shift from the subject of Socratic dialogue to the meta level of Socratic dialogue. And for example, check whether understanding the rules necessarily means the accepting the rules,
Yes.
and as well as following those rules.
Yes.
And it seems that it might be not on the same level with everyone.
Mhm.
And this participant might be there for doing something else. Maybe he thinks he accepts, or he thinks he understands, but yeah, just to check with him and with the group that, okay, what means accepting and how the others would understand that he accepts it. And maybe
Yes.
this might shift or change something, and when there would be a common ground on this level, to come back to the very topic of the Socratic dialogue.
Mhm. Yeah, good point. Yeah, absolutely. I just get the idea that, okay, rules are rules, but can you really working with them? Okay, I know that there is the red line, not go over the street, but I do it very often, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, Anu, you want to give some answer to the question in the chat room?
Yeah, let's deal with some of those questions or discuss about them. So one is that Pia and Anu, when you say example experience, what do you mean as an example? So this is like what terms or words the facilitator or philosopher prefers. I prefer to use experience when I discuss or ask participants to give the experiences of the topic of the dialogue, because example can sometimes be interpreted or understood as an ideal case. Some do understand it that way. So I prefer to say experience, and by that I mean to offer an occasion from one's own life when she has experienced the issue at the question or topic you are discussing in the dialogue. I hope I was clear. And Pia, do you want to add?
No, that's fine what you said. Yeah.
There is a difference like to cafe philo, in this sense that in cafe philo, for example, we take a term, a word, right? Like freedom or whatever. And here you take right away, you say, tell me an experience which kind of put you in question, or how? I mean, because it's very abstract. Like you don't take what do you mean?
Oh, yeah.
Give an example, please.
Yes.
Well, for example, there was this picture at the beginning of our presentation of the dialogue where we discussed the topic, what is the limit of tolerance? So the facilitator had, besides the topic, made a short introduction, why he chose that kind of topic. So there he also already shared one point of view to the topic, and that was somehow warming up for the participants into the topic. This gives a bit of ground, or makes it a bit more easier to come up with your own experiences from your life where you have met your limit of tolerance, where maybe someone's behavior, the situation has been the way that you don't tolerate it anymore. So the facilitator is asking you to share your experience of that moment. And if it's chosen as a topic of the dialogue or the starting point, then others can ask you questions and elaborate with you what is happening at that moment, what kind of principles, ideas, values can be found behind your actions and decisions at that moment.
So the facilitator brings that, or if there is a group of people and facilitator does not bring, how do you choose? Everybody has their own interests. So always facilitator, or if not, how do you choose from all like 5?
Yeah, to save time, it's often the case that facilitator comes with a topic, but in ideal situation, the topic comes from the group, from the participants, and then it takes time. It's about discussing what to choose, or then you just take the first that comes and check if that gives you good ground for developing the topic.
And what I want to add here is that I say that this is that people share their own experiences. I mean, this is very much about the practical approach in Socratic dialogue, because I find out many times that it's people used to speaking about things very theoretical level, very general level. But when you have to share your own experience, it's very practical, because that's the situation when you tested your own life, that how I behaving or how I'm understand these things, how these the interesting theoretical ideas coming in my real life. And that's something, it's not very easy one, even it sounds like that. It's very, very hard for people to exploring their own life to understand the principles. Yeah,
it's like the starting point for the possibility to have this personal insight into the topic.
Yes,
Not some theoretical point, but this insight through your own experience.
yes.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, we have very little time.
Yes.
Until the next lecture starts. So I suggest to address quickly the rest of the questions in the chat.
Yes.
And others who still have questions, please contact Pia and Anu. I think this would be better.
I believe that we can share our slides. I find there is some questions. It's fine. And we also writing an article about this lecture, so it's coming a little bit later. There is some Russian questions. Perhaps I can read them, but I'm not so sure. Can I understand?
Russian questions are technical questions, and we answered them already. So please answer the English questions.
Okay. Peter asking about is it possible to using this method with the children? I believe yes, but I'm sure that you have to make some kind of adaptation if you're talking about the age between 3 to 11, because obviously this Socratic dialogue needs very much the long concentration, and maybe it's difficult for children. I don't know what you want to say, Anu, about this.
Is it okay if I respond?
Go on, Peter.
So in my experience, the thing which is so central to Nelsonian Socratic dialogue is this idea of making sure it's based on their personal experience. But I prefer to, when I've worked in this way with children, the child that gets their idea, their personal experience examined so closely and scrutinized often feels quite, visibly uncomfortable with having all these probing questions and scrutiny about their thing, and actually very challenging things sometimes, because the whole point of the Socratic dialogue is that people think and experience is one way, but the group might decide that it's not. They might think it was a case of kindness, but the group might decide that it's not. So it can be really, really challenging. So I really don't like to use it with that age group, which is interestingly where I focus most of my work is around that age group.
Yeah.
So when I've used it, it doesn't really work, and I feel very uncomfortable doing that. So I've had to use things like stories instead, so we can have a concrete situation that we can work on, but it's not a personal one. at least not for too long. We can work with personal experiences, but not for too long with any one child,
Yeah, good point.
Excuse me, Peter, we have a very little time. We have just 4 minutes before the next lecture, so please, would you mind addressing very quickly the rest of the questions?
Yes. We'll do it. Okay, Pepe asking something about empirical research. I believe there is quite much about the literature about this, but not so much maybe about empirical studies.
No.
Yes. And how many meetings? It's very difficult to say, but to get some kind of idea that, example, when we are participating in Socratic dialogue in Germany, it's usually 1 week, and we are talking about the same topic in 1 week. So, and it's always when we end the meta dialogue, we always say, "Oh, time is running out," and we are anywhere with this topic. So it's wonderful. But in any case, depends on very much about where you're using and doing things.
Yes, this the more time you have, the more you get into this topic.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
There are slides, and there is our contact emails also.
Yes. Okay.
Where are they?
Well, I think Kirill can say something about that.
Yes, and I can put my email to the chat box. You can find it in there if you want to send it.
I will copy.
Yeah. Very, very nice. Very good comments. We are very happy with these. And sorry if we didn't answer some questions. Please don't hesitate to take a contact to us. This is wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Спасибо.
For your Спасибо большое. Thank you all for your questions and for discussion. And in 2 minutes, in the same room, we have the lecture of Ora Grungard. We have 2 minutes break.